Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1279, written by Anonymous. The picture that cannot exist. It was summer 1975, and we visited the Magic Kingdom on a weekend. Back in those days, Disney was working a ticket system. You paid to get in the park, and at the same window, you bought tickets to be used within the park. The tickets were designated A through E, with an E ticket being for the best rides in the park. As I recall, It's a Small World was an A ticket ride, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was a C ticket ride, and much later, Space Mountain would be an E ticket ride. In our group was Dad, Mom, my sister Kim, and I. We had a great day and documented the trip with our Polaroid SX70. A word about how our family worked. Dad was a photographer, period. No one would ever use a camera except for him. However, I, age 13, took the underdeveloped photos and fanned them until they developed. I was the man. If you do not remember how these cameras worked, please Google it. We thought they were great. After lunch, we were walking by the Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride, and I wanted to go on it. I had my e-ticket, but Dad stopped me short. He was, as usual, short and sharp. Son, think for a minute. That ride submerges under the water. We're not going on it. Think for a minute. I heard that come out of his mouth at least 500 times in my life. Why, Dad? What if it breaks while we're submerged? Me derisively. Okay, right, Dad. Son, when it comes to machines, it's an imperfect world. Things break all the time. What if the mechanic for that ride had a bad day yesterday? We are not going underwater on that thing. And that was that. I was a bit crestfallen, and Dad tried to throw me a bone. He offered to take a picture of the Nautilus as it cruised by, so I was mollified. After all, it was a chance to fan an undeveloped photo. Mom and Kim dropped back, and Dad went to the rail. We watched as he bent over the rail facing the lagoon and snapped a shot of his submarine as it traveled by on its underwater rail. Out popped the white photo with a whir and a click, and he handed it to me to fan. I did so, and we walked on, me contentedly fanning another photo. In a moment, I looked at the developed photo, and for a moment I did not understand what I was looking at. I called Dad over and showed him. In the photo was the lagoon, the Nautilus, a black area on the right, and the back of my father's head? Wait, what? The back of my dad's head was in the picture? Impossible. He leaned over the rail and snapped a shot himself. We watched him do it. There should have only been the sub and the lagoon in the frame. It was as if I had held the camera over my head behind him and snapped a picture, but that had not happened. Remember, only Dad was the photographer, no exceptions. I watched Dad take the photo while leaning over the rail. So did Mom. It was genuinely an image which could not exist, and yet there it is. Dad looked at the photo and said, "Well, crap, Kidowski. Told you we weren't going on that ride." Kidowski was his nickname for me at times. Dad was a product of his era, early adulthood in the 1940s, show no weakness. He appeared to shrug it off, but years later, Mom would tell me that he later broke down and cried in front of her and asked what it could have possibly meant. Was it a message about his mortality? He would die 6 years later of mesothelioma, but I never connected the two incidents in my heart. After all, we all have a shelf life. I give you an impossible photo that Mom, Kim, and I watched be taken. What appeared on the print should not exist. To this day, 46 years later, it remains one of the true mysteries in my life, and now you all know about it. Case notes file 1279. The picture that cannot exist. I think I will assume the role of the family photographer when I eventually have a family too. Sounds good. I have no explanation to offer on this one. Guardian angels don't take random pictures of the back of your head to freak you out or make you think of your mortality. It doesn't offer any sort of information on that, in my opinion anyways. It literally sounds like a true-to-God error of the simulation. Like information from a parallel universe infiltrating over here. But it's not a digital signal, it's an analog Polaroid picture. And there's nothing transmitting there. So how could that happen? I really don't know. Almost like two universes occupied the exact same space for that brief flash. And while your dad was stern, he truly did love you. Wanted to keep you safe, protected even against minor risks. So, just remember that about him. It's very sweet, even if it was annoying, I suppose. Creepy file number 118, written by Bart. The Malignant Whispers. I was young, maybe 12 or 11. My sister, 14, and I were alone in the house playing the card game Rummy on our living room floor, while she was complaining about her boyfriend at the time. We were listening to a Gloria Estefan tape. This was a long time ago, don't judge. Just when my sister's complaining was reaching a high point, the tape's music faded out, and then all of a sudden you could hear a man's voice screaming at us through the speakers. "Shut up! I'm sick of hearing it." Then the music faded back in. We were panicking. We ran to the couch on the other side of the living room, as far away from the stereo as we could get, and huddled together while crying like babies. She ended up calling her boyfriend, of course, to come over. After she hung up with him, the tape faded out again, and this time a woman's voice came up over the speakers and said, "No matter how hard you try, no one's coming for you." This time we lost our damn minds. We ran out of the front door and down the stairs to the yard to wait for our savior. We told our mom, and she said that the stereo must have picked up a CB radio or something, but we told her that we were listening to a tape, not on the radio. The function that can pick up the outside radio waves wasn't even on. When we replayed the tape later, it was just music, so no one taped over anything. The neighbor that lived downstairs was an older man from a different country, with a heavy accent, and his even older mother who didn't speak our language at all. The other neighbors on either side of our house couldn't have possibly heard my sister complaining. She wasn't yelling or even speaking much louder than a basic tone anyway. It was one of many strange and scary things that happened in that house. Okay, so on to the creepy file number 118, The Malignant Whispers. So right, picking up other voices from CB radio, which by the way refers to Citizens Band. I didn't even know that until I looked it up. It wouldn't even explain the words spoken though, or it wouldn't make them less terrifying. The last line of "no matter how hard you try, no one's coming for you." Well, that isn't just a threat, it sounds like someone being held captive by a torturous soul. And is it that, hearing words spoken in this home from decades ago? Spirits reliving a terrible scene? Or was it an ongoing crime at the time that somehow was caught on an active radio and transmitted to yours while yours was shut off too? That doesn't make sense, does it? Is it a kind of spiritual ripple in time? Maybe more likely? Since spirits have the juice to turn on electronics regardless of their manual setting, they can bridge the circuit. I hope whoever was trapped managed to escape, if it was happening at the time in real time or ages ago. I guess we'll never know. And now time for the quote of the day. Don't limit a child to your own learning, for he was born in another time. Rabbinical saying. Well, they do say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and I think there is some genetic truth to that. We tend to emulate our parents, especially the one directly associated with you, like your father if you're a guy, or your mother if you're a girl. For me, it's definitely true. My dad is very introverted. He prefers just to go camping over the summers and pretty much lives alone, does his own thing on his own time. But as far as learning, I think the most important thing is to teach your kids good values. And they're not too complicated. Don't lie, don't steal, be honest, don't aggress against others. And maybe honesty is the most important thing. No, the most important thing is don't be hypocritical. If you're going to do something, or if you don't want someone else to do it, you can't do it yourself, because then you're being a hypocrite, and it doesn't apply. You're breaking the symmetry of ethics, and that is very dangerous. So don't be hypocritical, would be my core lesson to impart on my kids. But as far as what a kid wants to do, what interests them, if it's something that diverges from you, the family trade, well, I think that's a bit archaic. Let them grow into whatever they find interesting. That'll be their purpose. or at least enable them to find their purpose. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.